AM 1450 WREL here this Friday morning, and we are going to be talking with Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press. Week in review from a news standpoint. That means we'll be talking politics with Chris for the next few minutes, talking about all the results from Tuesday, really in and around this part of Virginia. And I guess you got to start with the 5th District, Chris. Big victory for the Republicans. Robert Hurt knocking off the Democrat Tom Perriello on Tuesday in the 5th District. When you look at the election results from Tuesday as a whole, and certainly from the 5th District standpoint, what surprised you, if anything?
Well, the 5th, I don't think in the end surprised me. The polls had seemed to indicate a small but consistent lead for Robert Hurt throughout the last few months of that campaign. You know, the early polls had seemingly a big lead for Tom Perriello, so maybe if there was any surprise, it was that the incumbent came as relatively close as he did. Perriello ends up getting about 47% of the vote. Robert Hurt just shy of 51% in the overall balloting. Wins by 8,500 votes. You know, the incumbent Tom Perriello gets a visit late in the district from President Barack Obama, a big rally in Charlottesville last Friday night, and a lot of question about how much impact that would have. I think it could have actually ended up having a positive impact for Tom Perriello. He wins the Charlottesville and Albemarle voting by a combined 12,500 votes, but not able to overcome what was over 20,000 vote margin in favor of Robert Hurt throughout the rest of the district. The 5th is a very conservative district. We have to remember that for the longest time, Republican Virgil Goode had represented the 5th district, and Tom Perriello's win in 2008 was very much an upset. And really, you know, Virgil Goode had won his re-election battles previous to 2008 with margins where he was in the mid-60s or above against Democratic opponents. So for Tom Perriello to do as well as he did maybe was a surprise. The other surprise was down in far southwest Virginia in that 9th district race, where Rick Boucher, who had represented that district for 28 years, dating back to 1982, loses to Morgan Griffith, the House Majority Leader in the Virginia House of Delegates. And not just losing by a close race, he lost by about 8 or 9 points in a race that a month ago Rick Boucher led by over 10 points. So some surprises definitely across the board in Virginia and across the country, but those were maybe the two that Perriello ran as close as he did and that Rick Boucher lost.
Anything surprised you in the 5th District, or perhaps, the Boucher's loss, as you mentioned, to Morgan Griffith?
Yeah, the surprise there was that Rick Boucher had, it was over a 10-point lead in early October polls, and the race had gotten closer in the polls in the last few weeks of that election cycle, but it still seemed like, there was a small lead for Boucher going into Election Day, in the polling at least, and Morgan Griffith really, won throughout that district. There wasn't a place really where Rick Boucher ran well in that race, and I think the surprise there is that someone with Rick Boucher's long record. I mean, in 2008 he didn't even have an opponent. His last contested race was in 2006 against a guy named Bill Carrico, who served in the House of Delegates, and Rick Boucher won that race overwhelmingly. I think it was over 70% of the vote overall in that race. And the fact that Boucher not only had a competitive race against him, but actually lost was surprising. And a lot of people, the analysts that I'm talking to and seeing, are attributing it to the vote that Boucher cast in favor of the cap and trade legislation. Of course, the 9th district is right in the heart of coal country, and cap and trade would seem to affect the economy down there pretty significantly. Boucher tried to explain his vote on that, saying that he did so as part of a compromise. He had really worked hard to get some concessions from Democratic leaders to water down cap and trade, but still the fact that he voted in favor in the end for that legislation is something that is being at least pointed to as a reason that he didn't do well in the polls on Election Day this year.
Anything else surprised you from Tuesday's election?
Well, up in the 11th district, Jerry Connolly, who had won in 2008, Democrat, is going to be, he's got a lead. I guess we could say he's the unofficial winner, but that race is going to go to a recount with Republican Keith Femian. And that's up in Northern Virginia, in the heart of what you would consider maybe a Democratic stronghold in Virginia. And Connolly, just like Boucher, had a double-digit lead early in October. That race closed in the last weeks. It looks like he'll probably hold that seat, but Democrats statewide, in 2008, of the 11 congressional districts of Virginia, 6 ended up being represented by Democrats. At best, after this election day, it'll be 8-3 Republicans, so Democrats will see their representation in the House of Representatives representing Virginia cut in half. And so, it's a time for some soul searching. I know that Democratic Party of Virginia Chairman Dick Cranwell had announced before the elections that he would be stepping down, and probably good timing. It's time for Democrats in Virginia, I guess, if you're on the Democratic side, to say it's time for us to regroup and rebuild. It's like a football program that loses a few games and has a couple of bad seasons. After last year's state elections, it's time to hire a new coach and try to move forward for the next couple of election cycles.
What's the next big election? Obviously, beyond maybe the General Assembly elections. Senator Jim Webb, I guess, his seat comes up here in the next few years. I would imagine that's going to be another big one for the Republicans.
Yeah, well, 2011 could be interesting because in Virginia, the House of Delegates obviously had elections in 2009 along with the state races, governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. And the Democrats, because the way Virginia does state senate elections, they only do them every 4 years. So 2007 was the most recent. And Democrats hold control of the state senate. So Republicans will be targeting 2011 in that respect, I think, very heartily. They'll want to win back control of the state senate. And so that'll actually be a big one. Those are local races, but they're, across the state. So I think we'll see some activity in 2011. And then certainly, 2012, Jim Webb seats up. He won in 2006 in the first of two Democratic wave years. And he beat George Allen, at times very popular Republican former governor and then senator. He beat him by just, I think it was 7,000 or 8,000 votes statewide. Relatively close election, pretty close election. And so Jim Webb would probably be seen to be vulnerable in this new environment in Virginia. And of course, he'll be running on a ballot with the president and then all the Congress candidates as well. So that could be a very busy and active election cycle. And I don't know that we're not going to see a lot of ramping up even, for 2012, even now. I mean, I think we're starting to see the rumblings that George Allen might be interested in running for that seat again. He's certainly adding to his public profile in that sense. And so 2012 could already get started here in the next few months. But 2011 will have the attention on a local level. I think even in the district where I am, and I think it might roll down to your district as well, Emmett Hanger's state senate seat, he's a Republican, but I would expect a challenge maybe from the right, maybe someone with a Tea Party leaning. He faced a challenge in 2007 from a man named Scott Sayre. Scott Sayre's kept a high profile. He ran from the right side of the Republican Party, from the maybe far right wing of the Republican Party. I would be surprised if there wasn't another challenge, maybe from Scott Sayre or someone else, to Emmett Hanger, who's known as sort of a moderate Republican and has been in office for quite a while.
You wonder if these Tea Party folks will be extending their candidacies not just on the national level, but on a statewide level.
Yeah, I wonder about that too, and I think we might see some of that just in the 2011 cycle in some of those state senate races, maybe even some House races, but certainly in the state senate races, and not as much Tea Party, in those kind of scenarios, not as much Tea Party candidates challenging Democrats. I mean, you might see that in some Northern Virginia districts and some districts that are Democratic strongholds in Richmond and Hampton Roads. But I think you're going to see quite a few challenges to sitting Republican incumbents in these kind of races. And don't be surprised to see that maybe here in the Valley. I really think the Emmett Hanger race will see that, and you might see some other races, maybe some House races, where you see some Republican incumbents challenged from the right. And I can't predict who it might be, but I'd be surprised if we don't see some of those kind of challenges pop up here in our neck of the woods.
Okay, Chris, anything else we look for? Anything else on your mind from the Augusta Free Press standpoint? What do we look for in the coming days from the Augusta Free Press?
Well, we're going to be talking some more with political analysts and trying to get a handle on not just the election results from Tuesday, but the focus, I think, of our next few weeks will be on trying to get a handle on where policy is going to go, particularly at the federal level, as we start making sense of this new environment where the Republicans control the House and Democrats control the Senate. What's the future going to be? What's the next couple of years going to be like? And then also, we got to start wrapping our heads around these upcoming state Senate and state House elections, and so we're going to be starting to do that as well. It's a time to start thinking about the local politics, local policy, and that's to me the more important part of that. But that's going to be our focus for the next few weeks, really.
Okay, Chris Graham with the Augusta Free Press. We appreciate his update, talking about the weekend review, talking about obviously the results from Tuesday's election. We'll come back more online here on this Friday right after this.